Untamed.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The Platform.
iOS It's Only Sport. That's the name of the radio program we present on the platform 1 till 4 every weekday. Myself, Martin Devlin, Lachlan War. We just get together and talk about everything that has happened in the big, wide, wonderful world of sport. On the podcast today, Sir Steve Hansen, in his own words, about what is actually going on with him and Eddie Jones and whether or not he is involved with their World Cup campaign. Frank Endacott, former Warriors coach, delighted with the progress of the team this season and what to expect in the next couple of rounds and then into the playoffs. A real blast from the past for you, Jesse Ryder. Remember the name? Well, what a star he was. And that shooting star, yeah, didn't last that long in the Black Cap. But he's back playing international cricket. He can explain all of that. Plus, Jamie Wall, I believe the most respected and independent, trustworthy journalistic voice in New Zealand sport. He is in London at the moment, building up for the Springbok versus All Black match, which he will be covering. His thoughts on the whole Steve Hansen. Can we call it a saga? He can decide. As always, we start the program, tablets in hand. I say, gather my flock. It is time for a sermon. Explain yourself, Sir Steve. Let's go to the mountaintop.
We live in an amazing, amazing world, and it's wasted on the crappiest generation of just spoiled idiots.
So Steve Hansen to join the Wallabies camp prior to the Rugby World Cup. What? That was the blazing mass media headline we awoke to this morning. The way that TV1, TV3, etc. reported the story, you'd think that the former All Black coach, the World Cup winning All Black coach, had defected to Eddie Jones's mob and was in camp waiting for kickoff in France. Not quite that. Steve Hansen defection was the actual headline on the News Hub website. Calm the farm just a little. We find out after speaking with him that he says he is in fact helping out Eddie Jones, who he calls his old mate, for a few days, not getting paid for it, giving advice as opposed to rewriting tactics and game plan. And he informed Ian Foster that he was going to do it, and Foz was quite happy with it. Look, the timing isn't great and the perception isn't either, and I do get that. I think most people's initial reactions here at home when first hearing or reading about that story this morning were 1, shock and or surprise. 2, what the hell is that all about? And 3, surely he wouldn't be doing that to his old mate Foz when he knows very well how important this cup is to everything about the All Blacks and the future of New Zealand rugby, would he? Hansen's own explanation is easily understood. But that doesn't and won't change what fans think about those actions. Is it any different from, say, Brendan McCullum now coaching the England cricket team at a one-day World Cup when we're all still aching and hurting, the heartbreak of losing to England by run rate in that final 4 years ago? Is it any different from Graham Henry himself running off to help Argentina prepare for the 2015 Rugby World Cup after winning it in 2011? These guys are professionals. They seek opportunities wherever they may arise. I think amongst all of this, it's important to still be aware that when you gain your fame and fortune as a result of the investment of ordinary New Zealanders who see you playing for and or coaching a national team, then doing anything formal or informal for an opposition is going to raise some ire. Of course it will. That's natural, and so it should. Just like a beloved player leaving, say, your NRL or your EPL club and going to play for someone else. Yes, the natural reaction is going to be, I feel a bit betrayed. I don't think that's entirely the case here. Steve Hansen says he is just doing it for a few days and he's just helping out a mate, which sounds innocent enough, but he himself is also savvy enough to know that an action like that will raise eyebrows and will always cause much debate.
Devlin.
What do you want? We want information. Information. You won't get it.
The Platform.
In the meantime, Lachlan, we have a raft of sports news.
Yes, and how on earth do I fit all of this into a very quick hit bulletin to start the show? I can't. But I'll do my best to whittle this down to the most important meaty bits of news today. So, of course, Sir Steve Hansen, the former All Blacks coach, won us 2 World Cups, one as assistant, one as a head coach. He, linking up with the Wallabies, very short term. He's not going to be there during the tournament, just there in the lead-up, working with Eddie Jones, giving him a bit of a hand. Came to the surprise of many of the All Blacks players, including Dane Coles, who was interviewed by media in London overnight when asked about what he thought of Shag Sir Steve, sorry. We're not friends. I probably shouldn't call him Shag. Sir Steve, linking up the Wallabies. He said, yeah, what, actually? In camp, kind of set up? Shag, what are you up to? That hurts a little bit, to be fair. Cole's 36 years of age, of course, is never short of a clever quip in interviews, but this revelation clearly left him floored. Yeah, and you watch the video and he's walking around a bit gobsmacked. He goes back to some of the players and kind of mentions to them, and then you can see the shock on some of those players' faces as well. Former Australian fullback Israel Folau missed out on Tonga's Rugby World Cup squad, while former Wallabies teammate Adam Coleman was picked, even though he's yet to play for Tonga. One more player is set to be named, apparently. Tonga have included 5 former New Zealand players, Malakai Fekitoa, Charles Piutau, Augustine Pulu, Vai Fafita and George Mwala. I'm pretty damn sure all of those guys played for the All Blacks as well. Malakai Fekitoa, of course, was at the World Cup in 2015. Athletics World Championships, Kiwi Speed Queen Zoe Hobbs and pole vaulter Eliza McCartney have crashed out of their respective events in heartbreaking, contrasting but heartbreaking fashion. After becoming the first New Zealand woman to break 11 seconds in the 100 metres, Hobbs has fallen mere thousandths of a second short of making the final in her specialist event. Meanwhile, McCartney, of course, making her comeback after years of frustrating injuries, failed to clear the bar in vault qualifying with 3 misses at her opening height of 4.5 metres. Now, she got a 4.75 a couple of weeks back, and we interviewed her not long after that as well. So that's a real shame for Eliza McCartney, who made a sensational comeback from just nasty Achilles and hamstring injuries. Football news, Arsenal managed a 1-0 win over Crystal Palace at Selhurst Park this morning in the Premier League. They joined Brighton and Manchester City at the top of the table as the only 3 teams to have won both their games to start the season. Arsenal, though, third out of those 3 based on goals difference. Mason Greenwood. Now, this has been a pretty nasty story that has bubbled away for well over a year now, about 18 months. But Manchester United have, along with Greenwood, mutually agreed to part ways after a 6-month internal investigation into his conduct. Greenwood was arrested in January last year following allegations surrounding material which was published online. Charges against the 21-year-old, including attempted rape and assault, were dropped earlier this year. Manchester United said in a statement, all those involved, including Mason, recognised the difficulties with him recommencing his career at Manchester United. It has therefore been mutually agreed that it would be most appropriate for him to do so away from Old Trafford, and we will now work with Mason to achieve that outcome. He probably goes and plays somewhere else in Europe, I'd say. I hope he doesn't go to Saudi Arabia. Well, actually, to be fair, I don't care where he goes. Actually, I take that back. I don't care where he goes. Spanish Soccer Federation President Luis Rubiales, I think that's how you pronounce it, Rubiales, has apologised after an unsolicited kiss on player Jenny Hermoso's lips during celebrations after the FIFA Women's World Cup final on Sunday in Sydney. Of course, Spain winning that match 1-0. The incident happened when the trophy was about to be handed out and the players go on the stage and shake hands with people and whatnot. He said, did Rubiales, surely I was wrong. I have to admit it was without bad faith at a time of maximum effusiveness. Geez, that's a wordy statement. Maximum effusiveness. What a word. NRL Elite Competitions head Graham Annesley has defended the referee's decision not to penalise Warriors fullback Chance Nickel-Klukstar for a very scary mid-air tackle against Manly Seagulls fullback Ruben Garrick. The did signal, though, to Graham Annesley, did signal a likely rule change during the off-season. He explains that Todd Smith, referee, and bunker officials were right to rule on the letter of the law, but he hints that the law may change soon. The way the rule is structured, that way there are other incidents in games where there is contact with players in mid-air. What the heck? The way the rule is structured that way is there are other incidents in games where there is contact with players in mid-air. It's a little bit confusing, that statement, but looks like that rule will be changed, which is not a surprise because it should be changed. For the time being, Martin, that is what is making news.
Devlin.
Oh my goodness me!
The platform.
Steve Hansen joining the Wallabies ahead of the World Cup? Well, what? This headline blazing across New Zealand media today. Traitor he's been called. Defected to the Wallabies was one headline I read. Calm the farm. Is that so? Sir Steve with his words on exactly what is happening with him and Eddie Jones. Steve, just let me read you a couple of the headlines in the New Zealand media here at the moment. This is on TV1 News. Steve Hansen joins Wallabies setup ahead of World Cup. Okay, that's a blazing headline. Another one from Dane Coles on News Hub. Shag, what are you up to? All Blacks stunned by former coach Hansen's defection. Quite strong words.
Well, obviously Fozzie didn't tell him I was coming here because I'd spoken to Foz about it, and so they're fully informed on what's going on. And New Zealand TV1's got it completely wrong. I'm not joining the Wallabies. I'm up here with my wife on other business, and got asked by Eddie if I'd spend a few days with them. And as he's a mate, I said yes. So, we won't be giving them any trade secrets, but we will be giving them some feedback on what we're seeing, and that's all he's asked me to do. And I think rugby's a game where we all share ideas and work and help each other, and I see no problem with it. But I do understand that there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding, so people have got a wee bit excited, but I can't do too much about that.
How did it come about then?
Well, as you know, I know Eddie really well, and we talk often, and he knew that I was coming up with tasked to do this other stuff that I'm doing in Munich, and he said, hey, well, could you come and spend some time with us pre the World Cup? And I said, yeah, no problem.
And
after
so
I had a yarn to Fozzie about it, and he understood, and he was supportive. So once he was supportive, I was okay with it.
So what exactly does he want from you then?
Oh, look, I don't know if you know Eddie well, but he is a man who brings a lot of people into his environment, and I'm not the only one that's not part of the team that's here this week, and he's looking to try and help these guys get better, and he's looking for feedback on how he's doing that, and that's all we're doing. Nothing
tactical, nothing like that?
No, there's nothing tactical. And look, anybody that knows me will know that there's no way I'll be giving away any secrets about the All Blacks. Like, you don't spend 20 years of your life working for a team like the All Blacks to go and give everything away. All I'm here to do is say, like, Ed, this is what I'm seeing, and helping him create a team that can get better, and that can only be better for New Zealand rugby in the long run anyway, if Australia gets better.
Do you understand, though, that people will have a reaction to it back home?
Yeah, I understand that because they're not informed, and that's okay. But, if you put it into perspective, any one of those people that's upset about it, if they were going away somewhere and their mate said to them, hey, can you come and spend a few days with us and tell us what you think we're doing right and wrong, would they do it? Of course they would. So it's no different than that. It's not as if I'm taking all the secrets and laying them out on the table for Australia. And as I said, I spoke to Foz about it, and he's comfortable, I'm comfortable, because we both understand that rugby's bigger than all of us, and we're here to help each other.
What did you think of the internationals on the weekend, mate? Did you get a chance to watch Ireland again? How good are they?
They're going well, and playing really, really well. I think, the only thing that's going to be tough for them is the side of the draw they're on, and the expectations of coming in as number one in the world and not having gone past the quarterfinals. If they handle that pressure, they're more than capable of, going a long way into the tournament and even winning it.
As far as
saying that, I think the All Blacks, are in the same boat. I think they're playing really, really well as well, and but 5 of the best teams in the world are on one side of the draw, so 3 of them are going to be out with the quarterfinals.
Yeah, that's a vagary, isn't it? They've got to do something about that, about doing the draw 3 years out. All Blacks against Springboks this weekend, and what are your thoughts on that?
Look, I think the big thing for the All Blacks is Foz and his team will be looking to get some important game time into people. But at the same time, keeping fingers and toes crossed that no one gets injured. And the closer you get to the tournament, the less you want those, because you've got to make decisions about replacements before the 28th of August. If you lose somebody before then, you can replace them and then still bring that injured player back at some stage if there's other injuries. But after that, you don't. So, you've got to play, and there will be injuries. You just hope they're not major. But it doesn't matter whether we win or lose that game. I don't think so. I think they've put their marker in the ground. There's other things at work now.
All right, when do you go to work with Ed? Tomorrow?
I got here yesterday, so I spent a day with them today. They didn't do too much, and I spent the morning. I went out for lunch and then spent the rest of the afternoon with my wife, actually. So it's not as if people could actually see what's happening versus what they think is happening, they'd have a bit of a giggle at themselves.
Minister of Common Sense needs to get involved forthwith.
Next!
That's me.
We need to talk.
I'm the minister.
We need to talk.
And the thing about the Minister of Common Sense is that we've abolished Parliament. There's no point, is there? Just one ministry with a benevolent dictator in charge who gets to decide.
Next!
Yes, no, go. It's just that simple. There's only 3 commands. There, it's kind of like you have a whole sheaf of papers on the desk. There's 3 trays. Yes, no, go. What was your take on this, the initial moment you heard it?
I quite liked it, to be honest.
You did?
I saw it last night in bed when I was just scrolling through the sports news before I went to sleep, and I just sort of chuckled and thought, oh, yeah, okay, cool. I have no problem with it whatsoever.
All right, so
Next!
What is your take now that you've heard that interview in full?
The same. I have no problem with it whatsoever. I sort of did a double take when I thought, well, hold up, he talked to Foz. I like it a lot more because he did talk to Foz, and I like it a lot more that our mass media misreported the whole thing. But I sort of sat there and thought, well, if you're Ian Foster, wouldn't you tell your players just to kind of let them know? And then I thought, well, no, because you don't really want to worry about another team. You just want to
Well, you're bringing something into the equation that
doesn't really matter.
It doesn't need to be.
And he's not going to be there during the tournament. And should we go up against the Wallabies, which it could happen in the semis or the final, should it happen, he's not in the team by then. So, I have no problem with it whatsoever. I was really surprised by Dane Cole's reaction, though. I thought that was a bit strange.
Next!
Can you see or understand why people would be piqued at hearing that?
Oh, yeah. You're going to the enemy. You really like. The thing is,
well, see, I don't consider Aussie the enemy because I don't rate them at all.
Well, that's the thing.
Okay, say it was Ireland. Say let's change.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that.
Okay.
If it was Ireland or France or South Africa,
or even England,
I'd like it less, but I don't see England as a threat.
See, that's the same for me. I mean, okay, I don't mind him chatting to Eddie Jones because if we didn't know about it and it was going on, we wouldn't know about it, right?
Yeah.
In terms of if he stayed for the duration of the tournament and this was an official post and Eddie Jones...
he was essentially a lead assistant or something like that.
Eddie Jones dumped an assistant or the assistant decided to leave before the team left for France and Shag takes that role. Does it change? Hell yes.
Yeah.
Why does it change? Because we kind of feel like we own the intellectual property these guys have. That's how I feel about it. It's the same as when Coots and Butterworth went off with Team New Zealand. I didn't have a problem with them going or doing whatever they wanted. What I had a problem with was the knowledge they had, and that knowledge we had paid for as taxpayers. We had spent tens of millions of dollars building up the development side of those boats and everything else. And what did they take with them? That was my question, and it's never really, to me, been satisfactorily answered. Because they personally didn't own that. They were employees, I thought. However, when it comes to Shag, all of the information, and we've asked him this before, on his laptops, New Zealand Rugby haven't asked for any of that. It basically, once you finish your tenure as your coach, you just shut your laptop and you walk off. So you've got all of that. So potentially, I don't know how far ahead they actually think about these things, develop, but say there were things up the sleeve in 2019 that we were planning for 2023.
Oh, well, would you really be... In 2019, when you're at a World Cup, are you really worried about the World Cup after that?
Okay, well, that's it. Or maybe it's nothing to worry about.
I think it's a fair point, and I hope I don't see why he wouldn't be telling the truth, but when he says that I'm not doing anything from a tactical perspective, it's all about just, Eddie asking for my advice on a couple of things.
Well, here we go.
Next!
Where do you draw the line in the sand? Do you draw it with, I don't like the idea of you standing up in front of that squad and inspiring them? Do you draw it there?
I think that's fine.
Is it just a whisper that, hey, I can talk to Eddie Jones about this and say, well, in actual fact, the way that you're creating those pods in midfield on second and third phase is actually a recipe for disaster? Do you draw it there?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. So now we're getting into tactics and now we're getting into game planning, right?
The thing is, you can sit there, there's far out, there's a lot of layers to this, isn't there?
They're massive, mate. Yeah, that's why people react to it as strongly as they do.
If you look at it and... Shag is, say, giving him advice on the All Blacks. Let's say it goes a step further and he's talking, and Eddie says, oh, okay, over a couple of beers, they're out for a nice French dinner, you know, they're whining and dining each other. Then after a few beers, when Shag's maybe more willing to talk, Eddie's asking about, okay, what about the All Blacks? And if Shag says, okay, well, I've noticed this and this and do this and this. At the same time, any brain or person with a brain can watch a game and piece together what the All Blacks do.
Sure.
So if you're Eddie Jones or you're his assistants, there's nothing stopping you from sitting down there and watching how the All Blacks play and unravelling that yourself.
Figuring it out yourself.
And as well as that, we can sit here and complain. Well, people can sit there and complain about Shag's involvement, but had nothing been reported and he's not even in camp, there's nothing stopping Eddie Jones and Shag having a phone call.
If money's involved and he's paid for his services?
No, thank you.
Does it change knowing that Fozzie knows? Because if Fozzie didn't know...
That would be a bit snaky if Fozzie didn't know, I think. I like the fact that Shag asked
Okay, so
him.
what we're establishing here is we're establishing that there is a really delicate balance, isn't there?
Yeah.
In terms of other New Zealand coaches providing similar services.
Yeah.
Graham Henry went to Argentina after we had won a World Cup and was co-coaching them, wasn't he?
I can't remember.
Well, whatever his role was, again, the question I always had in my mind is what, if anything, are you taking from what you knew as your time as head coach of New Zealand, taking over there and sharing?
Yeah, but at the same...
Because is that knowledge yours to share?
But at the same time, if he wasn't, Shag's not Fozzie. It's not as if he's cloned himself and he's now coaching the All Blacks and the original Shag has gone off. Like, as much as Ian Foster was his 2IC for 7, 8 years, or however long it was, 8 years, Fozzie's his own coach. He's got his own structures, he's got his own tactics and whatnot, as do Jason, Ryan and Joe Schmidt and everyone else in the coaching group. So Shag can give them some information, the Wallabies some information, but really how much does he know? Now, if you want to talk about the way that the All Blacks played in 2019 and his laptops and his tactics and what Shag had, that's his stuff. That's not Fozzie's stuff. So the way, there's only so much Steve Hansen can actually tell Eddie Jones and the Wallabies because he hasn't been involved with them in any capacity for 4 years now.
Let me throw some other names at you. Would you be happy if it was an Armour Corps?
No, I would not like that at all.
See, what's the difference?
Well...
Because he's Sir Richard, Captain Old Town.
There's something very different about
we
a
don't
guy
want to share him with anyone, do we?
who was our greatest player, who played for us for 14 years, who was our captain, who captained us to 2. There's something different about being the player and putting on the jersey as opposed to just coaching the team. There's a big difference for me there.
I feel the same way about my football team, about my NFL, so about all the teams that I love.
Now, we'll turn it around. What if, hypothetically, when Eddie Jones got sacked by England, the Wallabies didn't pick him up, they still had Dave Rennie, and then we brought Eddie Jones on board?
More than happy.
I'd love that.
Wouldn't have had a problem with that. But then again, he'd been out of the coaching realm for a very long time. The last team that he head coached internationally, Japan before England.
Japan, England.
Then he gets dumped by England, and then we pick him up. Well, I mean, that's just complete hypocrisy. If I'm okay with that, why the hell shouldn't I be okay with one of our boys?
Next!
Did the mass media report this in a way that was genuine, or did they take a stick to it? On the News Hub website at the moment, some giggly political reporter people has asked the Prime Minister what he thinks, and they're running this as a sports news story. I love this. I mean, it just goes to show how little credibility they have as a news organisation now, that they're running this as the
Herald are as well.
As their lead sports story about somebody, giggly reporter asking the Prime Minister, should you take Shag's knighthood off him?
Now,
I mean, this is what we are reduced to in terms of news coverage in New Zealand these days, isn't it? I mean, the lowest common denominator is now what is determined. Jamie Wall in London, head of the Springbok versus All Black Test, reacting to the news that Steve Hansen is associating, shall we say, with the Wallabies for a few days ahead of this weekend's match in France. Jamie, let me just read you a couple of the news headlines. Steve Hansen joins Wallabies setup ahead of World Cup. That's one news, okay? So that's one of the most major watched news organisations in the country. Shag, what are you up to? Dane Coles' reaction. All Blacks stunned by former coach Hansen's defection. Those are the headlines from News Hub and One News. What is happening with Steve Hansen?
I'd love to know. I guess Eddie Jones has called in a favour from him. I mean, that's the only sort of logical conclusion I could come to out of this, because I was there when Dane Cole said all that. He was actually pretty shocked. He didn't actually know until it got put to him, and that was the response that he got was, "Shag, what are you up to?" Which was very funny at the time. But I think his body language and reaction just said a lot about just how the news was hitting the team. And the funny thing was that afterwards, he walked off and told a few of the other players, and they had very much the same reaction as he did. We sort of watched it from afar. So, yeah, it's been an interesting day, because usually the days before the team gets named are tough in terms of like finding angles and news. You know, the All Blacks don't really want to give anything away. So to have this happen has been an absolute godsend from a journalistic point of view. But yeah, back to your question about what Steve Hansen's motivation is. I mean, you know, obviously, once coaches finish, he's in a spot to be able to do whatever he likes, which is great and everything. But I never would have thought I would have seen this. You know, obviously we saw Graham Henry go and do a bit of work with Argentina after he had finished with the All Blacks, but that's a bit different. You know, that was back when Argentina weren't really kind of up to much, and everyone would have thought like, well, it was probably good that he's going over there to help out a team that probably needs quite a bit of help. I mean, don't get me wrong, the Wallabies need all the help they can get as well, but for Steve Hansen to do it, didn't think I was going to see this day.
Yeah, well, what are we meant to read into it? I've received a message direct from him, and you know, pointed out to him the blazing headlines here in New Zealand, and this is the direct quote: "No, I'm in there for 3 to 4 days at the request of Eddie. It's a storm in a teacup." Unquote. What's your reaction?
I mean, yeah, he's probably right. It is, but still, the optics are I'm not going to say they're bad, but it's definitely interesting. Like I said, it hadn't really been signposted or anything. You know, obviously he's done a bit of work. He's directed rugby at Toyota up in Japan there. He did a little bit of work at the Bulldogs over in the NRL. But yeah, I mean, I can understand that he thinks it's a storm in a teacup. But for the average New Zealander, like, nah, man, it's a pretty big teacup if that's how you're going to see it.
Well, after speaking with him, and he explains it in the way that he explains it, it kind of sounds a little more innocent than I suppose the blazing headlines would suggest. In terms of Ian Foster, I mean, that was the thing that I liked hearing the most. As long as Foster has heard about it and he's okay about it, because otherwise it would be a bit of a slap in the face. And I understand when you hear this piece of news, that's the way that most people would react. And it's certainly the way that I reacted to start with as well. It's like, what the hell? What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the main thing for me is the timing, and that it's only a couple of weeks out from the World Cup starting, because it really does feel like Eddie Jones has kind of rolled the dice a little bit and gone, because, you know, he's just had an assistant coach just quit on him, which is why he nutted off at that press conference last week to deflect some attention from all that happening. And so if you kind of put two and two together, Jones needs an assistant coach, and that's what Hansen's come in to do with you know, the clock ticking down on a World Cup. So yeah, I mean, Hansen can say it's a storm and teacup all he likes, but I mean, for New Zealand and Australian fans, to be fair as well, like this is a big deal.
The Tight Five.
Let's talk about Jesse Ryder then. Your thoughts, your memories, your impressions of him as a Black Cap. I want to talk about the 100-metre men's sprint. We just lightly touched on this before 2 o'clock. And the fact that Usain is 3.5 metres clear, Lachlan. 14 years later. What does that tell you? Shag with the Wallabies. Springboks have named their best side. What does that mean? Ahead of the All Blacks naming our side on Thursday. Mason Greenwood has been moved on by Man United. Owen Farrell, that decision as to whether or not the red card gets reinstated happens overnight. You've done a predictor for the Rugby World Cup. And no Israel Folau in the Tongan squad. Lots and lots to talk about. Plus, Madonna has introduced her 29-year-old boyfriend to her family on her 65th birthday celebrations, Lachlan. Let's kick it off. Though with Arsenal versus Palace, what did that tell you today watching that game? Are Arsenal going to challenge Man City in the Premier League?
Well, Selhurst Park's a very tough place to win, and I've for a couple of years now, I've really rated Crystal Palace. So I think if you can come away from there with a win, especially when you get a red card, they got a red card, which is, I thought, very harsh. And they had some good chances. Arsenal were the better team. They are probably looking the most likely.
Yeah, that's what I reckon. The most likely.
Obviously, I think if Liverpool can sign, we're linked to a few midfielders. If we can sign another good midfielder that is capable of starting, I think we're in that bubble. Chelsea are way off.
United are way off.
I think you guys are way off. Spurs look all right. They don't have the talent. That's their problem. They don't have the
I thought
goal
Newcastle
scorer.
looked great in week one, but then
City
put them to bed.
City didn't look great. So
Yeah.
I think Arsenal look the closest, but I think there's got to be a gulf between first and second this year.
Mason Greenwood moved off by Man United. Where does he go? What potential country or club can pick him up and restart his career? Now, the facts about this, ladies and gentlemen, is the charges were dropped. He impregnated the girlfriend that he attempted to rape and abuse and assault and all of that other stuff. I'm not going to go into it. If you listen to the audio and read the transcripts, it's absolutely revolting. This guy hasn't played a game of football since January last year. Charges were dropped because the main witness didn't want to press charges anymore. And in New Zealand, the way that the law works is if that happens, because quite often there's a lot of intimidation goes on, coercion goes on, and if that happens, the police can still press charges even though the complainant, original complainant, may withdraw them. This doesn't happen in the UK. That's not their law. So he impregnated her, and the charges are dropped, and we all know what happened. Yeah, we all know what happened here. Okay, so where does he go? Say he comes down to the A-League.
Oh no,
No,
he'll get. There'll be some European countries, maybe more so on the eastern side.
I would think so.
Or some European countries that the optics of it to them don't look so bad because he's innocent. Technically, he's not been found guilty. That's what they'll be saying. So he'll go somewhere else in Europe, he'll play really well, and then he'll get some game time, then he'll slowly be picked up by other bigger clubs and bigger leagues. He'll eventually find his way back to England.
You think so? Do you think
absolutely.
he could end up in the MLS? See, with Messi there and the positive publicity around him, I'd say no now. No chance
But
now.
I honestly think, not to praise Mason Greenwood, but he is such a talented footballer that once he gets back into shape and his fitness and his skill set is repolished, he will get a lot of attention from some pretty good teams.
Saudi, he end up there?
No. Again, I think. Come on, you don't go to Saudi at his age. I mean. Look, just talking about Mason Greenwood, the footballer, for a second, and ignoring what else has gone on. Not saying that we should ignore it, but just for the sake of this little bit, he's too good. He's too young and too good to go to Saudi Arabia. He's too young and too good to go to the MLS or even consider the A-League. He'll get enough attention from whether it's a lower-ranked Spanish club, whether it's a French club, whether it's a Swiss club, whether it's someone else in Eastern Europe, maybe somewhere in Serbia or Slovakia, or those play. He will get attention from some good clubs where he can play some good competitive football, play in some European competitions, whether it's Europa League or Conference League, and then he'll find his way to a bigger team, and eventually I think we'll go back to England.
As long as it's not in the red shirt, I think there's stuff where
The sad thing about this, I think, is, and there's athletes in various sports around the world where this has sort of happened, where you've done something wrong, this is very wrong, what he's done, at a young age, and eventually, sadly, 6-7 years later, when he's making headlines again for his play, people will start to just kind of forget about it or try and push it under the carpet. Happened with Kobe Bryant. What went on with him in Colorado in 2004.
Right.
People forgot about that pretty damn quick.
charges were withdrawn again because the complainant didn't actually.
Yeah.
Springboks have named their strongest side to play the All Blacks in London. That means that we're naming our strongest side. Jason Ryman asked about this, I think, the other day. He said, yeah, absolutely. We have to. And I totally agree with what Justin Marshall told us yesterday as well. When you look at the gap between test matches, that our A-team hasn't played since July, right? And you've got the whole of August, and you've got one test match before France, the opening World Cup match, a couple of weeks away. We have to play.
You have to get them
We've
out
got to
there,
play. And,
without a doubt.
and also against France as well. That's vitally important. So the strongest possible All Black line, which is why this weekend, if you think, it's kind of what in football we'd call a friendly, it's not a friendly. There's nothing friendly about it. These two teams are going to go hammer and tongs at each other. They have to. Because this is the last time we get combat before the World Cup, and we need it.
Well, for the Springboks, if you look at it from their perspective, they've lost 3 key players to injury, and they've just gotten the captain back from injury. So all they're going to be thinking about is, reps, minutes for our best
There you
players
go.
and minutes for what we think is our best 15. So
Yep.
they're going to go hard out. And people bring up the argument, what if we get injuries? Well, a guy can get injured in training. I think someone might have said it on the show yesterday. I can't
It was
remember.
Justin. He said Dan Carter
Dan Carter
missed the
got it,
2011
yeah.
rugby. He was practicing goal
It was
kicking.
goal kicking.
There you go.
That's all he was doing.
So that's right, yeah. And
Yeah.
did his adductor, I think it was. I
Yeah,
remember.
I think the South African team, their full pack is definitely pretty much their best. I think their back line, the back three in the midfield, I think a bit reshuffled, unless I've missed some injuries. But other than that, it's pretty
Does
much
Owen
their best
Farrell
team.
get his red card reinstated overnight?
I hope so.
A different judiciary, not the three Aussie guys. There's a Kiwi guy on this judiciary. So they're going to look at it again under instruction from World Rugby. I presume they're going to go through exactly the same arguments that the lawyers are going to present.
Is this going to be like a VAR situation where you're being encouraged? There's voices, in your ears saying, "Look at it again, look at it again," and then you feel
you
inclined.
put yourself in the position of those guys who've now been appointed to the new judiciary to look at this. World Rugby have said you guys have to relook at it.
So in other words,
what are they saying to you?
That's World Rugby saying, "Hey, reinstate this red
That's what they're
card,
saying.
suspend the bloke."
Yeah.
That's what I'm
reading into it. If you're going to sit there and fly in the face of World Rugby, who are employing you to do this and say, no,
he's innocent.
Okay, that's probably the last time you are employed by World Rugby. That's what I'm reading into this.
Yeah.
We'll have that decision for you tomorrow morning. The World Athletics champs, 9.83, pretty good time for the men's 100. How do you rationalise that the winner of that in 2023 is 3.5 metres behind Usain Bolt, who ran it in 2009?
It's pretty incredible.
14 years later, people, with all the increased nutrition, training methods, better diet, health, running shoes, tracks, all of that, and he's 3.5 metres ahead of you, slowing down.
Yeah.
Looking at the big screen when he broke that record at 9.58, slowing down.
Which he did in all his races. He sort of just slowed down and celebrated
and
at the
over
end.
the line, because it's too embarrassing to run 9.1, isn't it? Because at that stage, everyone's going, what?
You're juicing.
You're juicing.
Well, the guy came second, Tyson Gay, who was in the form of his life that year and had the best time that year up until that World Championships final. He ran it's either a 9.6, I think it was a 9.69 in that race, or a 9.68 or something. Which that gets you gold in 2008. That gets you gold in 2016. It gets you gold in 2021 in Tokyo, and it gets you gold in pretty much every other world. It's really bloody awesome. It sucks now because you only really realise it, at least if you're me, that era of men's sprinting. I'm not going to say it's the best, but you look at the blokes who finished behind Usain Bolt, and had they just been born a few years later or a few years earlier, heck, they'd be getting all these other gold medals.
I don't know if they'd gone to the same doctors, perhaps. You could raise that argument. Perhaps had the same training facility.
You don't believe anyone's succeeding and winning gold medals on their own ability. You think everyone's juicing. So
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I absolutely do, mate. Until proven otherwise, I just believe everyone's cheats. That's it.
Well, just in everything?
Yeah.
Great, okay.
Pretty much. Just one final comment on the athletics before we move on. Are the runners in those events like the 10,000 metres, are they the most... I always think marathon runners are the most unhealthy-looking athletes I've ever seen. Eat some food, for crying out loud. You look anorexic. They're so skinny. I was watching the 10,000 metre women. They look so...
Well, they're just muscle. Bone and muscle. There's no fat on their body.
There's nothing there.
No.
Get a pie in you at some stage.
Well, they probably do. They probably eat...
then they spew it up afterwards, don't they?
Well, no, they use it up. The carbs that they eat turn into just energy and just get burnt, essentially. Isn't that what happens? I don't know. I'm not a nutritionist.
How about this for a blast from the past? Jesse Ryder. Remember the name. At one stage, just the cleanest ball hitter the Black Caps had. Well, probably since Brendan McCullum. And what an opening partnership those two guys were. Well, he's back playing international cricket. Masters international cricket. What are you doing in Fort Lauderdale in Florida?
I'm playing a bit of old man's cricket, mate. The old US Masters T10 stuff.
All right, explain all that to us then. So, who's playing in this tournament? How many teams? All of that.
We've got 6 teams. Pretty much all the legends are here, mate, that I grew up watching, like Shea Afridi and Callis and Gale. Yeah, it's pretty cool getting back into it and playing against guys like that again.
So T10. So let's just, off the top of my head, this is like T20, but there's only 10 overs. Is that right?
Yeah, just 10 overs aside. The weather's been pretty crazy over here. It's thunderstorms and rain most days, so a lot of games have been rained out, and some games have been moved down to 5 overs each.
It's barely worth getting dressed for, isn't it? 5 overs, mate. Good Lord.
Yeah, no, 5 overs is pretty good for us old fellas.
How long does a game last?
Oh, you're done within an hour and a half.
Yep.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
How did this tournament come about, or how did you find yourself over there playing in it?
I didn't actually know that I'd been put in the auction. My manager, Leanne McGoldrick, had put me in the auction and rang me while I was at work and gave me the good news. So, yeah, I was stoked to be a part of it.
Okay, I mean, obviously you're good friends with Laura, who put us on to you and that, and when we heard the story yesterday, I thought, oh, delightful, I've got to give you a call about it. So where were you working before the call came through?
I'm working up at Cape Kidnappers Golf Course in Napier.
What do you do?
Just greenskeeper. We're just doing it all, turfing, mowing the greens, fairways, tree work. Yeah, no, I'm loving it up there at the moment.
And when's the last time that you actually swung a cricket bat?
Well, obviously playing a little bit of indoor cricket, but outdoor cricket I haven't played since the Legends League in India last September. So, yeah, I'm still a bit rusty with the bat.
And that Legends League, same kind of players that are turning up to play that?
Yeah, most of the boys that played in that are here as well, so it's good catching up with them again as well.
Are you striking the ball all right?
First game was pretty dusty, and today was dusty, but yesterday I hit a few out of the middle, which was nice.
Okay, well, when you say it's dusty, so what is that? You're not seeing it or you're not hitting it well? What happens?
Just a bit of both, just not watching the ball properly out of the hand and, yeah, just not timing it like I'd like to. Like yesterday it was nice, I just kept still and I was striking the ball well. And today was almost the complete opposite. I was probably trying to hit the ball too hard. And, yeah, it just wasn't timing it at all.
39 years young, mate. Wow, it goes quick, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. The years are flying by at the moment, aren't they?
Aren't they? The older you get, you look back and you think, what the hell? Do you ever look back at your own career and think about it much?
No, I don't actually. The last sort of year I've just been cruising and working and just, playing indoor. Indoor's been my main focus lately.
Is that just on a social basis?
No, I played for New Zealand at the World Cup last year, and yeah, just sort of been playing all the big tournaments for our Hawke's Bay team, the Turkeys. So I've got stuck into it, but yeah, this year I've sort of taken the year off cricket completely until sort of this came about.
To hear the full interview, download the platform at the App Store. Via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to the whole show and all of the interviews in full. The Warriors going great guns. 15 wins, more than in the 2 previous seasons combined. Just a couple of rounds to go. Home finals berth already in place. It's just a matter of where the team finishes in the table. Former coach Frank Endacott, delighted with what he's seen. Great to be talking about our favourite team at the moment, isn't it? I mean, after so long, it seems, of wanting a season like this, we are having one, Frank. 15 wins, mate.
Yeah, unbelievable year, Marty. It's good to see, after the heartache we've had in the last number of years, many years actually, and to be on the high side of the roller coaster is something special. And I think they've done a fantastic job, and I think there's more to come, hopefully.
Yeah, well, so far, just your assessment of the 15 wins. Let's park the form over the last few games because I want to, digress and talk about that. But at the start of the season, if anyone had said, we'll confirm a finals place with 2 games to go, you would have ticked that box and gone, yes, every day. If anyone would have said 15 wins for the season, which is more than the last 2 previous combined, again, you would have said, I'll take it every day, right?
Well, I had a mate that said they would, and we had a bet on, so I've got to shout them out to dinner. So he had the confidence. I didn't. I picked them to finish 11th or 12th, and the 10 previous years I was spot on the mark. But I'm proud and pleased to say I got it wrong this year.
Yeah, why were so many of us in that boat? Is it just because of the past and you don't want to get your hopes up and all of that kind of thing?
Well, yeah, it is, Marty. I mean, you hear people say every year, you never miss it. This is our year. This is our year. Well, it hasn't been our year for couple of decades. But the thing is, now it could be our year this year. I mean, the performances that this team's put on, I mean, you take the last 3 games. The last 3 games, they haven't been at their best, but they've still won. Now, that's a sign of a good team. And hopefully, hopefully that they're getting the timing to these playoffs spot on.
Yeah, it's always an intriguing argument to me that in any sport where, they say, look, a good team wins when they're not playing well. I'd also add to that this competition is just such a rugged, difficult competition. And if you ever go into a game, and you've had this experience yourself, I don't have to tell you this, but if you go into any game against any team thinking, oh, that's a rubber stamp 2 points before the ball gets kicked off, you will get bitten.
Yeah, you will, and it's been proven. I mean, you've only got to look at the Tigers at the bottom of the ladder, and they've beaten a couple of good sides this year. It's all on the day, and if you relax for 1 minute, get complacent, you'll get bowled over. So they've got 2 games left. Who have they got? Dragons and Dolphins, I think.
Yeah, Dragons and Dolphins, the game, Tim.
Yeah, well, both those 2 teams are in the bottom 4. So you would say, hey, there's 4 points there, but you can't look at it like that. You've got to go in as though it's one of the. You've got to go into those games now as though you're playing Penrith.
What are the things that have pleased you the most? Here's a couple for me. One is the defence and the attitude in defence all season. This is a team that hasn't had 40 points put on them, Frank, and I'll park the wins and I'll park the position in the table, and I'd take that above everything else after what we saw at the end of last year when Stacey, those awful press conferences where he'd sit there and he'd say the team's given up and they don't want to tackle. So going from that to this, that's a massive mindset change.
It is. In fact, I'd throw another D in there too, defence and discipline. I think their discipline over the last few years has been awful. The discipline this year has been very, very good. I think we've got to give let's face it, we've got to give a lot of credit to the coaching staff. I mean, they've done something there. They've got the confidence of the players. The players have bought into their plan this year. Their attitudes are so much better. The arrogance is gone. They've got the ingredients of a very good team at the moment, and there's guys that the recruitment's got better. So, all those little things added up have really helped their performances this year. Can
they beat, those top 2 sides, Penrith, Broncos, and I'd add Melbourne to that as well, because those are the 3 sides. We played them this year and haven't beaten them. Can this Warriors team beat those teams in the finals?
On the day, yes, they can. Yeah, on the day they can. Definitely. Anyone can be beaten on the day. It's been proven time and time again. If you look on paper, you look at the Broncos and Penrith, you'd say, well, that's the grand final. And Melbourne are always that team, as you say, and rightly so, that can upset one of the top sides. They're capable. But then outside of that, you can scrap and you've just got to beat one of them on the day and you're in that grand final. So, the answer to that is yes, they can, but they've got to play their best that day.
That's our podcast for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to listen to the entire show, 1 till 4, Monday to Friday, download the Platform app, and via Platform Plus, you can go back and listen to whatever shows over however many weeks at your leisure, at your listening pleasure. Platform Plus. First thing to do, though, is download the Platform app.
Devlin.
Unbelievable. Incredible.
The Platform.